So the next speaker is Hugo de Groof, who is going to speak on the extremely snappy and short title, The Evolution of the Environmental Acquis and Implementation in the Member States. Hugo.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Cameron, for introducing me. Well, those of you who were with us last year will actually notice that the title of the presentation is exactly the same. Of course, the environmental acquis is continuously evolving, and so is its demand for information and demand for information of those that are implementing it into the member states. Now, last year I took you to various slides like the one that Lane showed you at the end, where you saw different types of information systems and how the inspired data teams actually relate to them, and I also highlighted very strongly that all these different data sources are of course managed, produced, distributed by different types of organizations. Inspire has built a kind of a collaborative framework between all these different organizations, and this has been embedded in the sharing obligation between public authorities in Article 17 of the Inspire Directive. And that brings me to another aspect of my work. I already mentioned article, so you can already guess that I'm going to put on my lawyer's hat, although I am not a lawyer. So rest assured. Let me see if I can move this to the next slide. I will take you through a number of messages which come from our legal assessment on the status of Inspire. First of all, related to transposition, a mythical word. Now, transposition actually means that the Inspire Directive, the rights and obligations which are laid down in this legal act and agreed by the European Union, need to be transposed, transformed, translated, if you want, into national law. This is not a simple operation, because the Inspire Directive sets objectives. As it is a directive, it's up to the member states who have the freedom to actually design their own legislation in order to reach those objectives. This is a complex task, and I will comment a little bit on the difficulties that are related to transposition. Secondly, a few words only on implementation, only a few words, because over the last 2 days we've already had a very interesting workshop on Inspire State of Play and spatial data infrastructures. And later this week there will be a presentation on this issue. And also because in this conference we see more and more presentations related to the governance of Inspire. Therefore we are not going to linger too long. Then I'm going to shift in subject. EU environmental policy is challenged. I will explain you later why, and then how can we address this challenge. Let's have a look at transposition. The deadline for member states to have transposed the Inspire Directive in their own legislation was the 15th of May 2009. This has not been an easy task for various reasons. Actually, at the end of last year, our commissioner was very worried, I must say, because about 1/3 of our member states had not yet transposed Inspire. Now, automatically, when this happens, a lot of red lights start blinking in the Secretariat General of the Commission, and legal procedures are launched, leading to infringement eventually. On the 1st of May of this year, luckily, the situation has changed. All those member states who did not transpose timely have done so, almost. There are some issues, but all court rulings have been stopped before the court actually concluded, with one exception. However, on the 1st of June this year, I'm happy to report that all member states have fully transposed the directive or are in the process, and this is in particular very difficult for federal states, to have it also transposed in the legislation of their different states and regions. This is the case, for example, for Austria, where still a few of its regions need to lay down the acts. However, then a second assessment starts. Is the law actually conform to the Inspire directive? You can imagine this is a hell of a task. Up to now, the Commission has assessed about 10 cases, 11 actually. And I'm sorry to say that none of the legislation is actually 100% conform. In addition, we should look at the dates of transposition. I colored them differently. Only one member state managed to transpose before the actual deadline. 6 member states did so at the end of 2009, but the majority of them only managed to transpose the directive in 2010 for various reasons. The complexity of the issue, certainly. Also the complexity of their own government structures. Like I said, federal states, they have a very difficult task to do so. Also changes in government. When government change, it's very difficult to adopt a law. Now the question that we can ask ourselves, looking at the status, considerable delays in one country, as I said, one court ruling, the problems on conformity, which will automatically lead now in fall again with launching infringement procedures. The question that we have to ask ourselves, did this actually affect the implementation of the directive? We should not forget this is a directive from May 2007. We are now 2011, 4 years later. Is there a correlation between delay in transposition and implementation? You would assume yes, because obviously, if all the organizations in the member states are not clear about their roles, about their mandates, about the law that they have to follow, are they actually capable of taking the right measures, the right coordination structures, and so on? This has been a major concern for people in DG Environment. I must say for our Commissioner as well. Now I must admit that I'm very happy actually that this correlation, this negative correlation, does not seem to exist. There has been, despite of these delays in transposition, an immense progress in several member states, albeit fragmented still, but work on implementation, and proof is given in the numerous presentations on this issue during this conference, is progressing rather well, I would say. So I would like to point you to the outcome of the Inspire NSDI State of Play workshop, which will be presented in the session on implementation tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Now something else, policy changes. Let's have a look at the Lisbon Declaration from the year 2000. Very bold statement to become by 2010 the most competitive and dynamic knowledge-based economy in the world, capable of sustainable economic growth, etc., etc. The environmental pillar of this Lisbon strategy was laid down in the 6th Environmental Action Plan, where a number of important statements were made, such as, and Lane already introduced this subject, policy making, knowledge-based policy making lies at the heart of the 6th Environmental Action Programme, as well as access to environmental information, the governance picture at large. Now we are 2010 and the Union has adopted a new strategy. I will not linger here because we are going to discuss that in our sessions, but you will see the same words coming back up. Sustainability. Sustainability. Now, where do we stand in sustainability? If we look at the State of the Environment report from our colleagues of the European Environment Agency and the IONET, for all the key issues of the 6th Environmental Action program, the 4 key areas, we see very little green smileys. We do have a problem. And as the report states, the EU appears to be locked in a number of status quo and downward trends, which are moving away rather than towards sustainability. So 10 years of Lisbon strategy, 10 years of 6th EAP, this is the status. Have we been sufficiently inclusive, open and transparent? Was the other element, governance. Let's have a look at the Eurobarometer results of 2009, just recently updated, and again, some elements of the State of the Environment report. Innovation is very high up on our agenda. 63% of the citizens agree that by protecting the environment, we have serious motivations to innovate. However, and this is a serious issue, serious governance issue, still 38% of the citizens feel badly informed. We need to address this. Also, because of this lack of information and risks, etc., only 3% of the citizens actually can be considered green pragmatists, so they do something concretely in their day-to-day life. So this has been highlighted as one of the major challenges, that we need to transform green attitude, because everybody is concerned, into green behavior. Now, what is required? According to the State of the Environment report, we need to create a new information environment to address this lack of accountability and transparency. We need to restore the loss of trust among citizens, in governments, in science, and in business. Now, Inspire is going to play a key role, obviously. Action is needed beyond Inspire. Beyond Inspire has been mentioned already over the last few days, and let me highlight a few elements of our strategy in this respect. The 6th Environmental Assessment Report highlighted the fact that inadequate implementation of EU environmental legislation, integration and other policies lies at the source of the status quo and downward trends. This leads to an increasing amount of infringements in various thematic areas. Water quality, waste, you're very well aware of. We need to change this trend. So our Commissioner has as one of his biggest priority better implementation of EU policies with 2 major pillars: improving the governance aspects and enhancing the knowledge base. I'm not going to read these statements, but knowledge, of course, relies on information. These are a number of principles which were laid down in a communication in 2008 on a shared environmental information system. It's very hard to not agree with these principles. And we continue. Do they sound familiar to you? Of course, because we started with Inspire on the basis of 5 principles, which are basically integrated in this new statement on information. How are we going to do that? We need to develop this new information environment. Could it be that we are going to do this through this initiative called SICE, the Shared Environmental Information System? Yes, as long as we do not consider that this is a system, an IT system alone. A more appropriate name would probably be better, like Shared Environmental Information Strategy, or a single environmental information space for Europe. And this is precisely where we stand today. After 2008, we went through various activities. We looked if we needed to develop a new legal framework to achieve this. The outcome of that work was no, we don't need this. Secondly, where do we actually stand? So we did a very in-depth status assessment of various issues. And now we are ready with what we call an implementation plan for this. And Inspire will be part of this plan. First of all, we identified 4 key problems. First of all, the inefficient policies which still govern access and use of information and data. As you know, as part of the digital agenda, the use of public sector information directive will be overhauled. Next year, we will start also with the public access to environmental information directive. Inspire, etc. Public procurement was mentioned. At the moment, they are not striving towards the same objectives sufficiently coordinated. So this is what we call the legal building site of the shared environmental information strategy. Secondly, there's still a mismatch between the demand for and the supply of environmental information and data. My colleagues in the various thematic areas, they are continuously, with the colleagues in the member states, looking at streamlining this demand for information from the community levels. But there's also a request to streamline data within member states, across governments, across all the different organizations which are involved. So developing this size implementation plan will require teamwork that we have already modeled in the Inspire community. 3 and 4, which are the two other issues, the information and data sharing infrastructures are still not sufficiently developed. We know that. It will take time to put Inspire in place. But also all the services that we are going to build, and we have seen already a number of excellent examples over the last days, and we will see more on top of the Inspire infrastructure. We need to continue our activity. We need to make statutory reporting more efficient. We need to support implementation in and between member states, and we need to have more public information services developed on the Inspire infrastructure. I'm going to conclude, Cameron. So, the fourth issue is crucial, and Lane already hinted to it. The data from which the information is derived is not sufficiently fit for the purpose. It's very difficult to benchmark environmental policy implementation performance between one region and another. You cannot compare pears and oranges. We need to work on these issues. Most environmental problems are transboundary. Floods, air quality, even soil, mind you. And of course, we then need to share data, and when this data is not sufficiently comparable, it's very difficult to actually integrate them into a modeling exercise or in an information or early warning system. So this is another pillar of the shared environmental information system where we are going to work. So what are our next steps? We are going to consult further with the stakeholders, with our partners in this, the European Environment Agency, the Joint Research Centre, our colleagues from Eurostat, and the other Commission services. And then we will have a breakdown of operational size key actions that we will also discuss, of course, up to great length with our stakeholders in the member states. It is not our purpose to set up a new massive governance circus around size. We have platforms like Inspire, GMES, and others. What we need to do is to bring them this message that these are priorities to work on, and then we can progress. And we hope to see an implementation plan adopted still before the end of this year. I thank you for your attention, and I would say there is light at the end of the tunnel, and I only hope it's not the next train coming. Thank you, Cameron.